Hi, I'm Steve Adubato. Welcome to a very important conversation. This is a part of a series of conversations, an initiative called 25 for 25. We recognize the 25th anniversary of the Russell Berrie Foundation, their Making a Difference Awards. And I'm honored to introduce, I met her at one of our last events that we had in public when we could be together. She is Fraidy Reiss. She's founder and executive director of Unchained At Last, the 2019 Russ Berrie Making a Difference awardee. Good to see you, Fraidy.
Oh, good to see you, Steve. Those were good times when we could get together in person.
Absolutely. Tell folks exactly what Unchained at Last is and why it matters so much.
Sure. Unchained At Last is the only organization that is dedicated to ending forced and child marriage in the United States. And we do that through both direct services and advocacy.
You have a very personal connection. Share, please.
Yeah, so I founded Unchained out of my own traumatic experience. I myself am a forced marriage survivor, grew up in a very insular religious community where that's just how it works. Your parents marry you off, whether you like it or not, to a stranger. And in my case, this stranger turned out to be violent. And when I finally managed to escape after 15 years with my two daughters, my family and community shunned me. They consider me dead. So that's why I founded Unchained, because I know that there are others right here in the US who are dealing with the same nightmare that I escaped from.
There is no federal law that prohibits child marriage. I assume there was.
Yeah, the United States,
by state?
So yeah, it's really shocking that in the United States there are very few laws to address forced marriage, to acknowledge it, to prevent it, to punish it after it happens, or to punish the perpetrators. And in terms of child marriage, when we first started advocating for policy and legislative change in 2015 at Unchained At Last, child marriage was legal in all 50 states, every US territory and district. And while marriage age laws are set, unfortunately, it's been pretty well established that those are set by the state and not by the federal government. The federal government as well has laws in place that not only allow, but even encourage child marriage. That's still true today.
Fraidy, what are some of the reasons why child marriage even takes place?
The perpetrators, when a child or an adult is forced to marry here in the US, according to what we have seen at Unchained At Last, the perpetrators are almost always the parents, and their reasons vary. But some of the main ones that we have seen are sometimes it is just because of tradition. It's the way it works in our family. It could be religious or cultural. That's just the way we do things. Often it's also to control a child's behavior or sexuality. If a child comes out as LGBTQ or a girl gets pregnant, there are parents who will use marriage as a way to kind of fix that situation. Even when there is a rape, there are parents who use marriage as a way to cover up a rape so some nice guy doesn't go to prison. Another reason we see a lot is for immigration. There are, unfortunately, I was talking about how at the federal level there are laws that allow and even encourage child marriage. Believe it or not, there is no minimum age today in the United States to petition for a foreign spouse or fiance, or to be the beneficiary of a spousal or fiance visa, which is absurd. You have to be 21 to petition for your parent, but you could be 4 and petition for your 80-year-old husband. So we have seen children forced to marry adults overseas so that the adults can come to the US on a visa, get a path to citizenship, and the ability now to legally rape what would otherwise be considered statutory rape, in many cases becomes legal within marriage.
Fraidy, we're playing this out. We're taping this on October 1st, 2020, right? So of all the chaos and confusion and uncertainty in the world, and again, when we first heard about this, I mean, we knew it was going on, but not to the degree that it is that your organization was doing what it's doing. And thank you to the Russell Berrie Foundation for bringing that to light and recognizing you and your organization. But the question I'm curious about is, why is there not more public discussion about this as a really horrible situation that must be addressed and can no longer go on?
Steve, I wish I knew the answer to that. I have been yelling about child marriage and forced marriage for 9 years now, and since 2011 when I founded Unchained. And I do feel that the issue has gained some traction, but I often say I think at this point I have gotten the message to maybe 3 or 4 million Americans. The problem is there are 350 million Americans. So
what about Congress?
I'm sorry?
What about the United States Congress? I mean, getting the message to the public is one thing, and it's huge. But Is there no legislation, federal legislation that is introduced that is being considered? I mean, nothing?
There actually is federal legislation,
Okay.
but remember, we have to pass legislation not only at the federal level, and there is legislation pending to close one of the loopholes at least that allow and encourage child marriage, the immigration loophole, but there are other things that the federal government needs to do that are not being addressed, and that legislation has been languishing and is unlikely to pass. But remember that we still have 50 states. We have, so far, our advocacy at Unchained At Last has led 4 US states to end child marriage, as well as 2 US territories. So if you do the math, that means we still have 46 states, 3 territories, the District of Columbia, and the federal government to get to. So you're right, there's still a lot of work to do, but I promise we at Unchained At Last are gonna keep screaming and writing op-eds and performing our chain-ins. That's a form of protest that we invented where we wear bridal gowns and chains to show legislators, this is what you're doing. This is what life looks like.
In the time I have left, let me ask you this. You won the award, the Russell Berrie Award for Making a Difference Award in 2019. What does it mean to you? What did it mean? What does it mean to you and the organization?
Well, winning the Russ Berrie Award was huge in so many different ways. And the first one just being that recognition. Most of what we do, you're talking about how most people don't even know this is happening. We're trying to solve a huge problem, a human rights abuse. The US State Department calls marriage before 18 a human rights abuse and calls forced marriage a human rights abuse. And so much of what we do feels very much like we're yelling into the wind after 4 full years dedicated to pushing for policy change and legislative change to end child marriage. Only 4 US states and 2 territories have actually listened to us. So just getting that recognition is wonderful because it reminds us of the importance of the work that we're doing. It reminds us that at least somebody appreciates it, and that if we keep pushing, we can achieve even bigger change and we can end child marriage in the United States. So just getting that recognition was important. The awareness raising aspect of it is tremendous as well. We're a tiny organization at Unchained. We've been yelling into the wind, and so many people still don't hear our message, but getting this kind of recognition also raises awareness. Now you're talking about it now, and there's just much more awareness being brought to the issue.
And just remember when we were
tiny, I'm sorry?
No, I was just going to say, I'm sorry for cutting you off, but I remember that so many people were moved by meeting you at that Making a Difference Award ceremony, and you got the message out to a lot of people, and it's also led us to this moment of being here. I'm sorry, I cut you off. I'll give you 30 seconds and before I have to end it. Go ahead.
Sure. Just one more thing is that the financial support is huge. We're a very small, scrappy organization. There are only 5 of us operating on a budget of $500,000. So getting a generous grant like that makes a big difference for us.
And by the way, the Russell Berrie Foundation is a big supporter of what we do in featuring not-for-profits. Thank you so much, Fraidy. We wish you all the best.
Oh, thank you.
And we'll be right back after this.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation. Funding has been provided by the Russell Berrie Foundation, Holy Name Medical Center, the Turrell Fund, supporting Reimagine Childcare, TD Bank, United Airlines, Seton Hall University, the Fidelco Group, ADP, and by Fedway Associates, Inc. Promotional support provided by NJ On Air and by ROINJ.
Data shows that many patients have avoided seeking critical health care in the wake of COVID-19 for fear of contracting the virus. Delaying medical care can have serious consequences, so you should never second guess or ignore your symptoms. At Holy Name Medical Center, we have measures in place to prevent infectious disease from spreading. We're clean, we're open, and we're safe for all your healthcare needs.